Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the planning board meeting of Thursday, April 10th, 2025. This is both an in-person meeting here in council chambers, and we have participants via Zoom, including one of our planning board members is on Zoom tonight. We do have a quorum here in person, but our fifth member is online and will be participating online, so we'll be taking roll call votes. Before we get started with our hearings, I do want to share that our 7:30 agenda item related to the site plan at 76 Maple Street will be continued. So if you're here for that project, you are welcome to stick around, but we will not be holding that hearing tonight. Before we get started on our first agenda item, we invite public comment on any items of interest to the planning board that are not on the agenda. So if there's anybody here who would like to make public comment, we will first welcome comment here in chambers and then online. So is there anybody here who would like to make a comment? Okay. Is there anybody online? Great. Okay, Daniel, you can go ahead. Please state your name and address for the record, and you can go ahead and make your comment.
Sure. Hey, can everybody hear me? My name is Dan Brindell. I live at 22 Phillips Place in Northampton. O'Connell's proposal for a central business scale apartment complex across two lots at the base of Phillips Place across the street from me was added to the 424 docket this week. Construction of this scale on a residential street inside of a historic district was only made possible by the upzoning of lot 32A197 in 2022. The significant rezone, lifting myriad residential requirements from the property, was tucked into the form-based code omnibus of that year. The specific change was missing from the 120-page ordinance and all public discussion around it outside of a single square on a single map on a single page. The map color key does not distinguish between URC and CB lots, rezoned to CBSS, and lot 32A197 is mislabeled under its central business neighbors number 32A170, completely obscuring the location, nature, and extent of this rezoning. Even self-avowed champion of the form-based code legislation, Councilor at Large Marissa Elkins, was unaware parking requirements in this lot were changed at all by its passage. On top of significant increases in density and height allowance, the URC to CBSS change removes a 1 spot per unit requirement, allowing builders to conceivably provide 0 spots for the 100+ new residents on a narrow URC street. Nowhere was the description of this action sufficient for identification of the lot in question, violating the state enshrined rights of residents, and maybe more alarmingly, sidestepping all the usual oversight and review processes a change of this kind would normally trigger. Residents became aware of the removal of residential protections on February 20th of this year during a legally mandated planning presentation. The extreme scale and impact of the project and seeming lack of consideration of its consequences was alarming to most in attendance. Rather than offer solutions or answers, O'Connell simply pointed to this rezoning and resulting deregulation as why they had no plans to mitigate any of the project's impacts. Their plans likely comply with what is required within a CBSS district and will thus easily pass through this planning board. I implore you to first consider what was never considered, however, whether this URC street and neighborhood have the capacity to shoulder this radically outsized burden. The safety and security of our very old homes and very young children was explicitly ignored by those behind this clandestine rezoning. They've told me, and I pray you'll have the courage to stand in the way of this scheme before their unethical efforts can be a success and endanger this neighborhood, our families, and the entire town. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And for people who are interested in that project, as was expressed, that project will be coming before the board at our next meeting on Thursday, April 24th. All right. So at this time, we will open up our 7 p.m. hearing for a site plan and special permit on behalf of Verizon for the installation of a new telecommunications tower at 17 Spring Street, Florence, map ID 22B-111. This entails both a special permit, which requires a supermajority for the new telecommunications tower, as well as site plan review as part of the special permit review, which requires a simple majority. We will first hear a presentation from the applicant. The board will have the chance to offer comments and questions, and then we will open up to public comment. So is there a presentation from the applicant?
Do I have to press it or is it on?
Just make sure it's green.
Is it green?
Yeah, it's green. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ellen Fryman. I represent Verizon Wireless and my address is 1441 Main Street in Springfield. We are here tonight with the Verizon team to request, as you heard, a site plan approval and special permit to erect a 120-foot monopole for cellular antennas at 17 Spring Street in Florence, which is property owned by the Northampton Lodge of Elks, number 997. This tower is necessary to be a substitution for an existing installation on a smokestack located at 221 Pine Street, which is actually just a few hundred feet from the proposed site. The smokestack antennas were installed in 2005. So now 20 years later, this now has an outdated system and the smokestack will not accommodate a state-of-the-art cellular facility. So we were fortunate to find this new location and have been working with the Elks now for over a year to get to this point tonight and request these permits. I will also mention that we have already appeared before the Conservation Commission and have been issued an order of conditions. So we will just give a brief overview of the site plan, and then we will talk about the coverage, although because it's just a substitution, you won't see any dramatic difference. And then we'll be available for questions. And so first I'd like to call Jesse Marino from Proterra, who will go over the site plan.
You want to bring up the plans?
Yeah. Brett can do it.
Hi, my name is Jesse Marino. I'm with Proterra Design Group, civil engineer on the project. As was stated by Ellen, this site is a replacement for the smokestack site located adjacent. It's located on a property here about 3 acres in size. It's the current home of the Elks Club. So this is the existing property. The adjacent river is on this side to the east. We got I think it's a co-op farm to the north, and 2 streets located, Spring Street's located to the west. And here's the existing site here. There's an existing building for the Elks. There's parking in the front, and we're utilizing an area to the right of the building in this location to propose the facility. This is an aerial here. Again, we're proposing a 120-foot monopole in this location here. It's replacing the smokestack site that's located in this area about 220 feet away. So if we zoom into the site that we're doing, again, adjacent here is that existing building. We're proposing adjacent to the building to install a area that consists of a monopole with elevated platforms. The reason for this is it's located in the floodplain. So we need to elevate those things above. Realistically, in this case, it's actually a pretty good thing because that allows us to, when we're elevating about, 3 feet above grade, we can actually, we're not doing that much compaction or change to the soils below. And then the equipment itself is actually on a steel platform. It's got open hole grading, so rainwater can pass through. Unlike normal sites that would have a lot of impervious, we really have a very small impact area here as far as that's concerned. Just to the right here, this is kind of an elevation view of what the tower would look like. Again, it's designed in height to mimic the existing smokestack to provide equivalent coverage to that site. It's kind of a little bit overview of the site, kind of peeling back a little bit. As was stated, we went in front of the Conservation Commission. As you can imagine, resource areas exist along this corridor. And we were asked to place the equipment greater than 100 feet away from the brook here. And we also propose mitigation along here. So there's actually a parking lot in here that's paved, and there's about 4,500 square feet of mitigation plantings that are proposed along here. So we're going to actually end up with a little less impervious on the site than what started. And there's about 150 plantings proposed in this area as part of the mitigation for work near the stream. The site around here for security purposes, we're proposing a chain link fence with slats. The reason for that is the slats give us a bit of an opaque look, so you can't kind of see through, but it also allows the water to come in and out in the event there was a 100-year flood event. So it doesn't impact any of the floodplain heights. The equipment itself is very similar to what's on the stack now, except that it basically is the latest generation of equipment. And as was stated, in order to have this upgrade using the latest and greatest equipment, the stack was not able to support that any longer. So this new site will allow that to move forward. It does have a generator. The generator is just basically a small backup generator. It is fed by propane, so there isn't fuel storage there as far as diesel or anything like that. And the idea is that if there was a power outage for an extended period of time, this can be used to charge the batteries and keep the equipment running. At the level of the antennas, it's just basically a typical what we'd call in the industry as a platform, and this allows the different antennas to be installed on it at the height required by the radio frequency folks, so that we get similar or better coverage than what's on the site now. We did a stormwater analysis, and there was also some grading proposed in this area. You can see here behind the building and to the side, and that is for compensatory storage for the very small amount of fill that we would have in the floodplain. Again, it's a pretty small amount. I believe it's under 400 cubic feet, which is, 15 cubic yards, a pretty small amount. But nonetheless, we provided comp storage for that. And this also allowed us to expand the existing stormwater system a little bit to account for the development in this region here. That's the project basically in a nutshell, and I can certainly answer any questions that folks would have on the site.
I guess, yeah, if you want to just talk about coverage a little bit. I will just mention that, the rear setback is 115 feet and the requirement is 120, so 5 feet shy. However, based on chapter 350, section 10.9 C5B, the planning board can allow a shorter setback if the tower is designed to collapse on itself. And we will be constructing a tower with that capability.
Okay. Let's see. I need the engineering necessity case. Do we have that? Uh-huh. Okay. And right, is there a way to expand it in PDF form? Not a PowerPoint, so I think it looks okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Juan Latore, 122 Forest Hills Road, Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm a principal radio frequency engineer with Verizon. I'm going to take a couple minutes to speak with you about the radio frequency necessities of the project and why we're pursuing it to improve Verizon's network. Not going to read this verbatim, but as Attorney Fryman and our other supporters have commented on, we've been at the existing Brushworks facility for just about 20 years. And a lot has changed in 20 years of wireless. Back then, most companies only owned a small amount of spectrum. They might deploy as little as one antenna per physical face of a signal running 2 coaxial cables up a line. They used to spend a lot of time on building large shelters on the ground where you had pretty massive pieces of cabinets and equipment that generated RF signal, ran it up the line to a couple of small antennas. In the last 20 years of wireless, things have changed dramatically. The FCC has allocated continuous amounts of new spectrum as the demands of the wireless technology change from just being able to make a voice call to being able to send text messages, the advent of the iPhone, video streaming, and now today in 2025 with things like AI and mobile gaming and getting into the world of autonomous vehicles. Demand has certainly changed, and with that, technology has changed. Spectrum has grown dramatically. The quantity of antennas that we need to deploy, and in particular, the creating of that radio signal doesn't really take place generally on the ground anymore. It takes up space on the tower to eliminate the amount of loss that goes from the generation of that signal to the signal that goes to the end user, the cell phone, the computer, etc. And so the smokestack, unfortunately, is really kind of outlived its useful life as a telecommunications facility, and that's really necessitating the need for a new tower. So we're fortunate to have a parcel right next to it that allows for a more traditional monopole that's going to have the structural capability to allow Verizon to install all of its equipment with the latest engineering standards, and also to be able to allow for future co-location should there be others that are interested in expanding their footprints in this area of Florence. Let's see. I'm going to briefly go through these coverage maps here. As Attorney Fryman alluded to, the coverage differences are generally minuscule in nature. We're only moving over a couple hundred feet from the existing facility. We're generally at the same center line. What is changing is our antennas will be modernized, our radios will be modernized. And so really what we're able to do with this new proposal is to modernize, to add additional spectrum that the facility is calling for, and to, help to make sure that the residents of Florence and the surrounding community have the best possible service. So in this existing map, you're seeing 3 areas of coverage here. The green is meant to represent areas where Verizon service is currently providing reliable indoor service. Yellow is meant to show areas where Verizon service is reliable for in-vehicle. And anything in gray is meant to show Verizon's coverage that is reliable for outdoors. Anything in white is below that reliable outdoor threshold. Doesn't mean that you're not able to make a call in that area. It just means it's reached a signal level that's weak enough where it doesn't meet our higher expectations for quality of service. But as you can see from the map, generally in this entire geographic area, there is at least reliable outdoor service. And then depending on if you're in and around this area of Florence or more closer towards downtown Northampton, you'll see more density of facilities, which you can see those blue pie shapes. The Florence 2 site, which is right next to where you see these pie shapes, which represent the Brushworks facility, is colored in this kind of magenta color. Going down to the next slide. This is just meant to show you kind of how important the site is, right? So if we had to take the site away, what would it do to coverage? You could see if you look there in the center, it gets pretty weak. There's still service, but you go from having a lot of reliable indoor service to really kind of stretching your footprint and mostly having just reliable outdoor service and some in-vehicle coverage. So it really is an important facility to the community. And it's important that we work to keep it modernized. And just going to the next slide, you'll see this is what the facility looks like when we move off the Brushworks facility and build our new facility at the Elks. The 2 don't run at the same time. Once the new facility is up and operational, within a reasonable amount of time, hours or less than, the radios on the Brushworks facility will be locked, and the process will begin of working through the decommissioning of our equipment on that Brushworks facility, which takes a little bit of time to just work through all the necessary permits to do that work, but that work will be done. This plot here is just really meant to show you graphically where each facility is dominant. So each one of these colors is just meant to say which facility is covering where. And, again, this magenta and 2 shades of blue in here are the areas along Route 9 and then along this area of Florence where the facility is dominant. So it's an important facility. It's got quite a coverage footprint. And again, some of these slides just kind of show the same thing. What happens if the facility isn't there? Well, you really depend on our facility that's up on the mountain there. Is it Horse Mountain? I'm trying to remember. Is it further up there? It's north of the VA hospital. It's escaping the name at the moment. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So, it's an important facility, not only for coverage, but also because as demand increases, you need to be able to have enough facilities to account for that demand with our spectrum, and that's what those radios provide. And again, just as part of the record, we just wanted to share all the surrounding facilities that we have already within Northampton, within Florence, and within the surrounding community. Verizon's very proud of the investment that we've made within the city of Northampton. I myself been with the company almost 15 years and have had a hand in modernizing or building all of these facilities, which is a great thing as a Western Mass guy. I remember coming up here as a kid. My father worked at the courthouse, and then when I went to UMass, I was up here a lot. So it's important to make these investments in our community. So just like Jesse and Attorney Fryman, I'm here to answer your questions. I'm happy to get into as much detail as you like, and we thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Just in closing, I just learned that as part of the Conservation Commission hearings for the order of conditions, the site plan was revised slightly, but the one that I have is not the latest and greatest. Anyway, so it doesn't really change anything, but it's not the latest one that was approved by the Conservation Commission. So we will have to submit the new plan. Again, nothing dramatic changed from what we've described tonight. So.
Could you give us some more specifics about what those conditions were and how it changed the site plan from the version that we reviewed?
You can speak to
Dean, yeah, you did whatever. Whoever wants to do that.
Sorry. Let's see here. Think of let's see. So the crux of the change had to do with the riverfront area. So from the edge of the flagged resource along the Mill River there are two regulatory kind of thresholds that go out. One is called a 100-foot inner riparian, and then there's a 200-foot outer. One of the requests by the commission, and I'll show you here if you can see my cursor. This is the 100-foot inner riparian line. See this dashed line right here? And as you can see, originally the corner of this compound extended into that region. So one of the things they asked us to do was to reshape the same area that's here, 2,500 square feet. But the new area basically pulls this corner in this location right here outside of it by extending the area in this region here. So basically what we've done is just made this area basically the same size, but made it totally 100-foot outside of that stream. And in doing so, the tower slid a few feet this way. So that's basically the change. Still the same height, still these same units here, except this Verizon's equipment was moved in line with this against the building, and the future additional carriers, if again, they're not proposed now, but there could be some in that region. That was basically the change to the plans. If you'd like, Dean can explain some more, but there were some questions that the commission and the folks at DEP had regarding the history of the site, how much of that area was degraded, some of those type things.
Good evening, folks. My name is Dean Gustafson. I'm a senior wetland scientist and director of environmental services, All Points Technology. I was a lead wetland scientist on this project. Jesse did a great job kind of describing essentially we went from a square compound to a trapezoid. There are performance standards for work in riverfront area under the Mass Wetlands Protection Act and the town's wetlands bylaws. As the layout is presented in this graphic right now, you see that kind of corner of the compound kind of projects into the inner 100-foot riverfront area. So the comments we got back from Sarah and from Mark Stinson, this is a redevelopment project in the riverfront area, but they wanted to see if there was a way to reorient the compound to try to keep out of that inner riverfront area. We're able, fortunately, to accommodate that with a new design. Everything is outside of that inner 100-foot riverfront area, so we're providing additional protections to that resource area. So, thank you.
Are there questions or comments from the board?
Process question.
Your mic.
Thank you. Process question, Carolyn. Given that they don't have that in the record yet, can we move ahead and approve this?
Yes, you can. There's not it's a minor adjustment and it's a separate permit. You don't need to wait for the Conservation Commission to issue a permit or confirm that those plan sets have been made. They need to meet the conditions of the Conservation Commission and Planning Board if there are any.
Thank you.
So I have a couple. I'm interested in the co-location. Does Verizon currently have any monopoles with co-location kind of or relationships with other carriers in the area?
Oh, I'm sure. Let's see. Well, I might not have all of these memorized by heart, but I'm going to work through it here best I can.
Don't overburden us. with
Yeah,
details.
but just to give you a couple of examples, like our facility on Atwood Drive, that's the one that you see from 91, that has co-location. The large, very large tower on King Street, I think you know that everyone is on that one. Pine Grove, is that on a golf course? I think it is, right? That one's got multiple co-locators. That's on Old Wilson Road.
So I guess my follow-up question is, if this becomes a co-location, does it change the nature, the physical nature of the pole itself if other carriers come on board? Does the pole get higher? Does it get wider?
Oh, interesting. Okay. So no, the pole is designed to have co-locators. So the typical situation would be, this is Verizon's proposal. We're going to co-locate on the top. Another carrier wants to join. They would co-locate, typical industry average is 10 feet below.
Okay.
And, the tower is built to hold X number of co-locators. Right now there's 3 major companies, and then there's a couple of smaller players that might come in. If an entity came in and said, I really want to be on this facility, but I can't be that low. I want to be above you. The tower is designed to be extended, but that's a different permitting process that entity would have to go through.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
I think our bylaws speak to a maximum of 130 feet and you're coming in at 120 now. And it was interesting. Attorney Fryman said that our bylaws are about if the pole collapses, it doesn't want to go outside to the abutter's property, which is probably going to be on the Elks or into the river. But the pole collapses into itself rather than falling. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. So Jesse will keep me honest. I'm not a structural engineer, but we used to use the term pre-engineered fault, so to speak. So the idea would be if you had a once in a century windstorm, your pole is structurally capable, but you design it in such a way so that it would kind of break at the midway point and fall on itself, so to speak. Does that make sense? As opposed to the whole thing falling down like a tree. Yeah.
You specified that it's intended to hold X number of co-located facilities. Our ordinance requires space for at least 3. Can you just confirm that you've met at least that minimum?
Yes, there's 3 total. Okay. We also talk about the height of this is unusual. So there's some regulations around aviation lighting. Is there any FAA aviation lighting on this? Does it reach that criteria?
Not aware of any lighting requirements, no.
Okay.
And all of our, this is part of the permitting process. Should we obtain your approval, even before we can get to construction? Verizon has its own, internal regulatory requirements. As a federal license holder, we have to, adhere to the requirements of the FCC, in their filings, the FAA in their filings, National Environmental Protection Act in their filings. So
we're the easy hurdle.
They're all unique in their own way, sir.
Just curious if the smokestack has co-location right now.
Not to my knowledge. It's interesting. I believe only Verizon is co-located on it, and we're co-located at two different what we would call center lines at it. And I couldn't tell you the full history of that. I started in 2011. I think Attorney Fryman, you said it was built somewhere around 2005.
Yeah.
So I seem to recall inheriting the site already with those two different center lines. But I don't think anyone else ever joined it to my knowledge. Yep.
So what's the plan with the panels on the smokestack? Those are Verizon owned?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
We referenced backup generator in case power goes out, and it's going to be fueled by natural gas. I thought
Propane.
propane. And I thought we weren't, I may got confused with a lot of our other energy bylaws at this point, but are we allowing propane tanks underground in an area like this?
It's above ground.
It's above ground.
Generator, I think, but it's only the restriction on fossil fuels is for new buildings. So it doesn't affect generators, backup generators.
Okay. And is it a 500-gallon tank or 1,000? I've heard two different things, I think.
I believe it's 1,000.
Okay.
That's due to the size of the generator, and just so that if it's cold outside.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you approach the microphone just so that people on Zoom can hear that? Thank you.
So there are provisions for a 1,000-gallon tank. And the reason for that is based on ultimately the size of the generator that Verizon would deploy at the site. That's basically the worst case. It would only be smaller from there.
Okay.
So the drawings you have before you are say buried. And I neglected to tell you that one of the other changes that was made was that it went from below grade to above grade, and it slid.
And it says 500 again.
Yeah.
So, right, there's a little discrepancy on the plan, so just be sure to rectify those before you finalize them.
Let me find that just so I can let's see here.
It's D1.
So originally, we're not seeing that. You are screen sharing.
Let's see if you shared that.
Share the wrong one.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see here.
So let's hit OK here. And then let's go stop share. And then let's go share. And then I'll just hit screen. Yeah, so or you can just share that if that's what you want. That's fine.
Yeah. When I did this before, that's what it did. So maybe there's a different way to do it.
Well, I'm thinking if you just do entire screen, then whatever's on your let's just
There it goes. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So correct. Originally it was proposed here. And this was some of the area that was in that region that was discussed by Dean. So as part of that, when we put the compound, when we changed the shape to to keep it outside, we no longer had the ability to put it there. So we slid it in this location here. Right now there's a dumpster there with a fence, and we slid it sort of behind there. That area of the building is higher, the grade. So we were able to, we didn't have to, no longer had to bury it. One of the reasons we were thinking to bury it before was because it would reduce the amount of compensatory storage you'd have to do. But we were able to slide that outside of it in an area that was closer to the finished floor of the building, which allowed it to pull that out. Because it went from being buried below ground to above ground, you don't get the benefit of the warm earth, basically, even in the winter. So when you go above grade like that, for it to work properly in like 0 degrees or very cold, you need a little bit bigger tank, and that's why it's like that.
Okay, thanks. So all those changes will be made on the plans, the final plan.
Yes, sir. Yep. Sorry about that. I should have probably brought that up.
The last little thing I saw on the plan is up on the north side by the farm there. There's this note about a slatted fence to protect the storage container.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so right now, and I believe there's somebody here from the, so in the area that we're proposing right now, the folks at the Elks have a storage area, it's like a container that they store things in. And we provided an area outside the floodplain in order to put that. And we have some screening in front of that. I don't know if the plan is to move it there, but we had accommodated that if they needed to keep the exterior storage that they had there.
Okay.
Is that accurate? If we get rid of the storage, excuse me, Louis Asbrook, 33 Laurel Park.
Louis Hasbrook, 33 Laurel Park, Northampton, Mass., a member of the Elks Club, and here to represent the club for this hearing. The storage containers are moved, and we don't have a current plan to replace them. And if we were to, we would start again. It seems like they were removed a year ago, and so it seems like we're doing fine without them. And less is always more.
Yep.
And the only other thing that I have is a letter of support from the Elks Club that I could read if you'd like. May already have a copy of it.
We've all seen that in the project files. Thank you. Are there other questions from board members? Sam, if you have questions online, feel free to chime in.
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you. No questions.
Okay. All right. Well, I think at this time we can open it up for public comment. I will invite public comment first here in council chambers, followed by Zoom. A few reminders. As I mentioned earlier, please state your name and address. Please remember to address your comments to us here on the board. And remember that we will often aggregate comments, so kind of hear from everybody, look for common themes, questions, and then address them all to the applicant at the end. So just because we don't respond right away doesn't mean that we haven't heard you. Please also remember that one issue is one issue. So if multiple people bring it up, it doesn't change the severity of that issue. Each issue that's raised is something that we're going to take into consideration. So we ask that you try not to repeat the comments of the people who came before you, and to try to keep it brief so that we have time to hear from everybody here who wants to speak about this issue. So with that, I would welcome if anybody here would like to make comment on this project, please raise your hand. Please.
Good evening, members of the board, neighbors, and representatives from Verizon. My name is Debbie Gottlieb. I'm on 34 Corticelli Street, about 500 feet away from the proposed tower. I'm here this evening to voice my concerns related to this installation, not just on my own behalf, but on behalf of many concerned residents in my neighborhood who believe the tower is not in the best interest of our neighborhood. And I want to be clear, I totally believe in technology. I'm actually a Verizon customer. I depend on the communications for doing work and general communications, also for emergency, contacts. So we understand the importance of reliable cell service, but the proposal needs to find a balance between technology needs and community well-being. I want to first talk about health and safety. While the FCC in their 1996 regs might say that current radiation levels are within safe limits, the truth is the science is still evolving. More and more studies are questioning the long-term effects of prolonged radiofrequency radiation exposure, especially near homes, schools, conservation areas, and playgrounds. We don't want to wait 10 years to find out we're the test case for something that could have been avoided later on. Also, if the cell tower is placed too close to residential homes and structures, it might have concerns about safety during extreme weather conditions and other emergencies. Obviously, this is a floodplain. We've had significant flooding over the past few years. And so obviously that needs to get addressed along with any risk of tower failure. There's been, in cases of fires or accidents need to be addressed as well. Secondly, our property values are at risk. Studies have shown that homes near cell towers can lose anywhere between 5 and 20% of their value. And those are just not numbers on paper, that's people's life savings. Thirdly, this tower will change the character of our neighborhood. We take pride in the beauty and feel of our community, the tree-lined streets, our parks, the community gardens, the Mill River, conservation, and our homes. A massive cell tower looming over our neighborhood is not just an eyesore, it's a disruption. And once it's built, there's no going back. Fourth, we question the actual necessity of the tower in this location. We understand that there needs to be a tower somewhere. We're asking for the ability to be able to come up with a mutually acceptable location. So we also wanted to know where the data was showing the coverage is inadequate in this area. And why hasn't Verizon considered co-locating on an existing tower, if that's a possibility? And we'd want to know that all the alternatives have been explored, or is this just the least expensive option for Verizon to move it from the smokestack couple hundred feet over to the Elks? Lastly, the process must be transparent. We request thorough environmental and zoning reviews, and we know you're doing that now, and a process that genuinely values public input. It should be a serious consideration of the real long-term impact on real people's lives. I want to note that in talking with several of the neighbors in the area, about 80 to 90% of the neighbors were not even aware of this project. And they also were not aware of the Conservation Commission meeting on February 27th. And as I was not aware of it either. So in closing, the tower might be a small item for Verizon, but it does have impacts for our quality of life. We urge you to protect our homes, our health, our future, and say no to this proposal. At the very least, delay it until all alternatives and consequences have been fully evaluated. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there others here in chamber who would like to speak? Please.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Thomas. I live at 72 Spring Street in Florence, and some of the concerns I have is, as she mentioned, property value. Also, we don't know what this does long terms. Right now, it is on the stack. They are talking about bringing in other servers, which means that there's going to be even more of an impact, possibly, on the neighborhood, the animals, whatever else is around. Also, as someone who lives on that street, to say that they were out of the floodplain, if they're on that side of the street, they're not out of the floodplain. I've been blocked twice on the opposite side of the street in the last year and a half. And so also when they talk about the wind, as someone who, my house literally shakes. The wind comes off of that hill there. So to say that, oh, 1 in 100 years of things, the trees that come down in my yards, the branches, there is a lot more wind than that. Not to mention, I would like to ask you guys, would you like this in this close to your house in your neighborhood? They talked about co-location, other towers. None of them are in residential that they talked about. It was Atwood, it was King Street. And so they bring in more towers and I mean, they bring in other cell services and put up more there. This is different than what's up there now and what our body and our neighborhood is receiving. Not to mention, it really changes the neighborhood. It is large. It's not a small thing. It's large. It is a big eyesore. And so I ask you, when you're considering this, do you want this in your neighborhood? Would you want this 500 feet from your house? Would you want to be looking at it when you go to the grocery store, when you take your kids to go to the park to walk back in sawmills? And because that's a big consideration. And as she said, it really does impact. That is going to impact severely my real estate value. So I just ask you to take that all into consideration. My last thing is, has anybody come to the town and said, we need better coverage in that area? Because this is driven by Verizon. Is it driven by our community? That's what I would like to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, my name is Lise McGinnis. I live at 11 Corticelli Street, one of the closest homes on the other side of the river. And the previous speakers said a lot of what I'd like to say, but I just wanted to add that I raised my child on that street and I run a family child care program. So I have a house full of infants and toddlers and preschoolers and homeschoolers at my house every day. And the health concerns really worry me. I am worried about upgrading to a higher level of service. I'm worried about other services joining on the pole. And I feel like the studies are still happening and not clear enough. And I don't really want my family and my children that I teach to be guinea pigs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Rosenfeld, and I live at 16 Corticelli, and truly everyone has spoken so eloquently about my concerns. I agree that the 100-year floods that they're talking about, we're having them. They're getting worse. That's why and the wind, those are huge concerns. But also that area, the community gardens and the playing fields and the work that Grow Food Northampton is doing to really make that a special part of Florence where so many families congregate to both in those gardens and on those fields to have this eyesore. And I think it's really interesting that there was no image. There was no image of what this tower was really going to feel like, right? All the mapping, it minimizes it by doing, looking down. We don't understand. I don't think we understand visually what this means. And it's a truly beautiful spot in Florence. It's being developed that way consciously. Lots of money has gone into it. And I think this merits I don't think it should be happening. And I agree. What are the real needs here? So I hope that this does not go forward. Thank you. Thanks for thinking about it.
Thank you. Councilor Maori.
Hi, good evening. Rachel Maori, Chesterfield Road in Leeds. Also the Ward 7 councillor. This is in my ward, and I'm here to convey concerns I've heard from my residents. We certainly appreciate the service that's being provided to our community. The threefold concerns I've heard as a councillor have been the view, the sight line concerns, property devaluation, the hit potentially to property values and health impacts. And, I know, look, I know in that sense, the health impacts, I know how tied your hands are in the sense. And I will just say that, in my opinion, it's an egregious overreach of the FCC to not let community leaders protect the health of our community. And, it violates the public health principle of precautionary principle that if there's an unknown health impact, that you first protect human health. So the service is great, but the health of our community always has to come first. And I I think that those studies haven't been done, and I don't think the FCC has done its due diligence to have that kind of reach. So that aside, I do have a couple of questions about this. It sounds like with the upgrades, I mean, does that mean, it certainly sounds like there's 5G capacity. It's not clear to me if that means that we're at 5G spectrum now in terms of radio, radio frequency radiation. And so my two questions would, yes, my first question about that is, do they have to notify us? Does Verizon have to notify us if they upgrade those, if they raise those frequencies? Because that's going to directly impact the health. This is a residential community. It's Grow Food Northampton. There's food crops. There's a recreational field. So I would like to be notified, like the community to be notified about those frequencies, what's being used now, and if that changes. And then I'm just looking at the application. It says here that Verizon's proposed installation has been located and designed to mitigate any impacts to sightlines. What are those mitigations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Alex Bowman, Northampton. I just had a question about the change in technology, if there's any sound difference, if all of this is going to be on the pole versus in a room previously. Is there cooling equipment? Are those constantly running fans? And if we are focused on a park and a garden next door, does that affect those people or even nearby houses? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in chambers who would like to make comment at this time? Okay, I will turn now to Zoom. If there is anybody in the Zoom room who would like to make a comment, please either use the raised hand button or turn your video on and wave your hand about, and Carolyn will recognize you and give you the power to unmute and to speak. Stay tuned for technical difficulties.
Madam Chair, would you like me to stop sharing? Will that allow you to see them?
That would be great. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, that should be good.
Hello. My name is Barbara Ferranti. I live on Meadow Street. I've listened carefully. And I am just thinking of a couple things. Generally, I don't have an objection. And I just noticed that for 20 years, we've had something very similar. And then I don't understand why all of a sudden we're raising significant concerns about our health and so forth. That's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I just want to point out that it isn't entirely a residential area. Across the street is Chart Pack, which is all commercial. Behind the Elks is a factory area. there's residential on a couple sides, and I can see that a person would say, I don't want to be looking up in the air at the pole all the time. But just in general, I'm not objecting. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn, is there anyone else on Zoom? Okay.
No, just that there were visual simulations in the package that was submitted. And so showing, so as opposed to just the plan set.
Thank you. We may get to that in just a moment. I think, Carolyn, could you first clarify for us on the board and for members of the public about the planning board's purview in this instance, particularly as relates to the FCC standards and the health concerns that have been raised?
Sure. So the cities and towns, as Councilor Maori described, really don't have any jurisdiction at all relative to health, sort of evaluating the science and the research related to health. So the jurisdiction of the board is limited to evaluating the RF analysis and showing the gaps. That was done essentially in 2005 when the antennas were first approved to be on the existing smoke stack. And then they've shown again here. So, and you also don't have any jurisdiction over the radio frequency levels. Only the FCC can approve, can grant licensing to, based on the radio frequency that they've been requested and then granted from the FCC. And that changes as the technology changes, and we wouldn't know that a license has been reissued for a different radio frequency. So the board really has only jurisdiction to evaluate aesthetics. So if you wanted fake tree branches to come out of the top, or it to be painted a different color, or, citing as it relates to the wetlands ordinance, and making sure there aren't impacts there. And then, of course, the requirements of co-location, so we don't have these monopoles popping up all over the city. And that's about it.
I know some questions were raised about co-location, and I just want to clarify and confirm that the zoning requires that co-location be possible. That does not mean that it will happen. Just as there's currently no co-location on the smokestack. So the applicant was required to make that possible, but it doesn't mean that will, it may well come to be, and that would probably be preferable to having 3 or 4 separate towers, but it may well not. Correct. Okay. I do think it would be helpful to show the renderings. So if those could be displayed by the applicant, that would be great.
And as they're loading those up, I will say the other pieces, there was a piece about sound that came up. We definitely can regulate the sound ordinance. So you might want to ask about more information about that.
Sure. I just wanted to mention one thing to the board. This computer has, I think, 3 times said that a reboot is coming. I think I clicked it like 5 minutes ago and it said like another 15 minutes. So we're not rushing, just making sure you're prepared in case we have to restart the PC. That's all.
Thank you. It does that like every meeting.
closer to the screen.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm squinting.
Plenty of space up front if people want to come closer to see better.
Trying to figure out how on his computer you go.
Advance it.
What about if you hit this? Hold on 1 second. Let me see. Nope, that's not it. Brett, is this your computer?
No, it's the.
Oh, it's here. Okay. Yeah, I guess you just have to scroll. Okay, yeah, I would just do that. Okay, got it.
All right, good evening again. Dean Gustafson from All Points Technology. Our firm was responsible for performing the simulations. So what this graphic shows is the location of various photographs that we took of the proposed facility location. And what we'll go through is we'll sequence through a series of photographs. We'll show existing conditions and then propose with simulations. And what we essentially did was fly a balloon at the proposed tower height, took photographs from the surrounding neighborhood, scaled those photographs, and then using computer generated software, simulated what the tower would look like from those perspectives. They're accurate as far as the dimensions of the facility, as well as the height of the facility and its scale and mass.
Can you just show where the existing versus the proposed on this, on the screen?
Yeah. I would just want to call out that if you follow our cursor, you'll see a red square where it says existing chimney. This is where the existing smokestack is. It's described as a chimney. And then there's a yellow square right here, thanks, Dean, where it says the word site. And that's where the proposed monopole.
Great. Thanks, Jake.
Yep.
So this is photograph one, which is taken from kind of the northwestern portion of the study area, north of Meadow Street, and along Spring Street. And so it's and that's what you see from the inset is the facility, the photograph location. So this is what you can see from that location, and at this scale and how it's projecting, it's a little difficult to see, but just to the right center of the photograph, you can see the existing smokestack in this existing photograph. Then for the proposed, for the most part, the proposed facility is centered in the photograph. So this one is obstructed by a couple of tall trees that's kind of intercepts the view location to the proposed facility location. So this facility would be, from this point of view, would have seasonal visibility, and then once the leaves come on, it'll be pretty well obstructed.
Your cursor to show us what you need.
So this is the proposed facility right here. Yep. Yeah, you're welcome.
Is that from the public way?
Yes, it is. It's in the parking lot for the ball fields. This is a little bit further south from that photographed one along Spring Street. Here you can see this is the smokestack location right here. So that's the existing conditions. Oops. This is a little touchy. And then this is the proposed simulation. So again, the tower facility is is centered in the photograph. This is the top of the tower where the antennas.
From like 1812 auto body.
Yeah.
That's correct. Photograph 3 is located along Spring Street, pretty close to the entrance for the Elks Lodge. You can see clearly the smokestack and view here. Existing conditions, and then this is the proposed view. Photograph 4 is located along Florence Pond Road, just a little bit further to the southwest of the proposed facility. You can see the Elks Lodge that is located just to the left of the photograph. You can see the smokestack. This is the Elks Lodge here. And that's what the simulation would look like in that location. So this is photograph 5, which is located on Ryan Road, fairly south of the facility. You can see the smokestack through the power lines to the right. And this is the top of the facility right here. Photograph 6 is located right on Florence Pond Road, just east of Spring Street intersection, looking across the parking lot at the Elks Lodge. Again, the smokestack is located right in the far right-hand side of the photograph. And then this is the simulation of the proposed tower. The view from Onatuck Street, just south of Lawrence Pond. See obviously the smokestack and the manufacturing industrial facility. And then this is the simulation showing the proposed tower. It's fairly well obstructed by the smokestack in this location. This is a view from Corticelli Street near the intersection of Pine Street. As the existing smoke, and we're restarting. I am sorry about that.
That is not your fault.
I was kind of interested in the Corticelli. Yeah.
Actually, the distance from the area where there's the residential area, the antennas will actually be further away, not by much, but they will be further away than the smokestack. So we can measure that, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, can I see your notes? There were a couple different points that were made. If it would please the board, I can try to hit some of them while we're here. So
This is kind of a summary here.
okay, sure. Thanks, Attorney Fryman. So one comment I'll just make regarding the discussion around health. I'll just remind the board that included in the application is a maximum permissible exposure report, which is in compliance with FCC regulations that we've submitted to you to show that we are well within the limits of the FCC. Thanks, I appreciate it. And just to say generally, I don't work for the FCC, and I'm not a radio emission scientist. But I will just comment that one of the things that the FCC does is that they make when they their calculations for exposure, they're 5 times more restrictive on the general population than on what they would call someone like me, who occupational, right? Because I'm in the industry and I received training on it. And so that's done as an extra layer of precaution so that the general population who might not be aware of what radio frequency emissions are, or what cell towers are, what antennas are, have that added layer of protection. And this facility, based on the standards of the FCC, reaches about 3% of those levels. So well within the bounds. The visuals, this is at 89%. When the computer comes back up, we can continue those. The valuations, not a real estate perspective, just, you know, my own 15 years of doing this. It's always a legitimate concern, and I respect the concern of any resident that, you know, has a question about their property taxes. I will say, from Verizon's perspective, we live in an ever increasing wirelessly connected world. Increasingly, you know, people are cutting the landline, so to speak, and relying on their wireless services. And you know, the flip side of that, you know, businesses, schools for education, personal use, you know, we rely on our devices. You know, we think back to the COVID-19 pandemic and how essential it was to have that remote connectivity when everyone was home. So we think that adds value. Included in your testimony that we've submitted to you is a statement that we did evaluate and review the area for any structures of a similar height within a mile that could be a feasible alternative. And there are none. And we're in a unique situation here. We're not building something from scratch. We're replacing an existing facility that's been here for 2 decades, providing reliable service with a new structure. And so one of Verizon's design responsibilities is to be able to ensure that we replicate that service, right? We need to make sure that we're not changing the experience in a dramatically negative way for folks that have come to rely on our service. And then the last point that Attorney Fryman wrote down here, and then I'll hit 1 or 2 other things, is just regarding noise. The equipment on the top of the tower, the radios, they emit no sound. They have small fans, but really they rely on the air around them for cooling. The cabinets that are at the base of the tower are enclosed. They do have some internal fans for heat dissipation, and we anticipate they'll be well within the requirements of audible sound at the edge of the property. And then I'll just, regarding the question around 5G capacity and outreach, almost all of the facilities in and around Northampton have been upgraded to 5G technology within the last couple of years, starting in late 2020. You know, we talked about 4G versus 5G. It's what I call an air interface technology. It's the different modulation of signals. Really just another generation of how you turn that radio frequency wave into bits to produce as much efficiency in how you transfer data as possible. What's different is the spectrum, which I referred to earlier, right? We deploy more spectrum at different frequencies. The higher the frequency, the more narrow that signal, and the less of its ability to traverse through buildings and things like that. The lower the frequency, the further it can go, the better it can traverse. That's why, for example, you know, you can sometimes be on the Connecticut shoreline and get, you know, the radio from New York City or something like that. So that's that piece. And I just wanted to mention, while Attorney Fryman is right that there's really no notification system to announce, you know, that a certain type of technology has been deployed on a facility. We are required by the FCC to provide regular updates of our coverage. They're readily available on Verizon's website as well as the FCC's website. And any facility that we modified within the town of Northampton or city of Northampton or any other municipality in Massachusetts, we have to apply for a building permit and adhere to any other municipal permitting requirements and preparation of materials as part of that. So we do that. I don't know what your password is, but if you'd like to get us logged back in, we'll be happy. If you can get us back into Zoom, we're happy to continue the photo simulations. Yep.
While we're working on that, are there questions from the board or items that we heard from the public that have not yet been addressed that we might address during this technological pause?
Thanks. I'll take up one. One question from the public was regarding continued use of the existing tower. I guess I'd ask if the applicants have any comments about why they're not putting new equipment on the stack, or I guess that would be the first question.
Yes, I believe that the applicant mentioned during their presentation it wasn't viable, but didn't give specifics about why that's the case.
We've been trying
to move the microphone if you
We've been trying since 2017 to figure out how to upgrade, and the technology, it just isn't, the tower won't allow for the equipment. I mean, we have an engineer that can describe it, but we just haven't been able to. So it's has one of the oldest technology of every tower in the area. So
again, I'm not a structural engineer, but what's unique about the smokestack is I believe a good portion of the foundation is underwater, which makes the structural upgrade that is necessary to support the equipment incredibly challenging. And again, it's not that the smokestack itself is not structurally sound, it's the smokestack ability to continue to hold heavier and heavier wireless equipment. So some of the radios that will be physically mounted to the platform are in excess of 50 pounds or more. The legacy antennas of 20 years ago were very thin, maybe 20 to 25 pounds. And so and I'll just comment that the technology moves quickly, right? Years ago, maybe we touched the site every 5 years, and then it became every 3 years, and some sites get touched every 18 months now because that's how quickly things move. The proposed facility allows us to do that. And but really, this has kind of been looked at 6 ways from Sunday, and the reality is it's just it's for today's modern telecom equipment, the stack has outlived its ability to properly maintain that weight.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
While we're still working on the tech piece, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the renderings correctly, and this might be worth pointing out that when we're looking at the difference between the existing conditions and the proposed conditions, part of what we're also seeing is the removal of the existing equipment from the smokestack, correct?
Yeah, again, Dean Gustafson. So for the simulations, we're just showing for the simulation photographs, we're just showing the new facility, how it'll look. So as far as the antennas on the smokestack, we do show them being removed under the proposed conditions in those photographs.
Okay.
Oh, I have a question. Yeah, I noticed that in our staff notes that there's a 12-month requirement for removing those. The attorney mentioned that it's a lengthy process to do so. Are you confident that you'll make the 12-month deadline?
Yeah, there's no issue with that.
Good, thank you.
Once we get closer to that point, we'll have a process that kind of overlaps as we're able to move forward and get towards construction of the new facility. We'll also be making preparations and filing the necessary paperwork to have the decommissioning of our equipment on the existing facility, so that there's not too much time in between the two. Yeah, a year won't be a problem.
And if I might, I think part of that comment alludes to the new monopole 15 years from now, when we go to a whole other kind of delivery of services. We don't want Verizon to walk away and leave that monopole there. So that's why we're gonna make sure that, yeah.
In fact, I understand that there are two pieces of that. One has to do with a performance guarantee for removal of the existing equipment, and then a second is a bond in the event of removal of the proposed tower. So it's actually a two-part proposed condition. Let's wait, and we can welcome one more round of public comment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, folks. So before I jump back into this, I'll just kind of reinforce one of the statements Mr. LaTroy made with respect to the base of the existing smokestack. So part of the foundation of that smokestack is actually within the channel of Mill River. So it's subjected to the forces of the stream flow as well as any flooding events. So I can't make any statements with respect to the structural stability, but part of the foundation is actually within the channel of the river.
So aren't we in more compliance with the Conservation Commission requirements too?
Yeah, so if there was ever any need to try to upgrade that facility, you would require an extensive environmental permitting effort, particularly with, having to have work within the river channel. And there is it's wildlife habitat within the channel of the river and kind of the immediate banks. So there'd be other concerns with trying to restore that existing smokestack to make it, more structurally stable. Also, from a kind of a infrastructure reliability standpoint, the proposed facility is elevated above the floodplain, as Jesse had indicated earlier. So it wouldn't be subject to any type of instability or non-service issues should the air flood. Still stay reliable. The emergency generator would still kick on if all the power was cut off from the facility during such an extreme event. So it does provide enhanced emergency services facilities because of that. So back into the photographs and simulations. This is the existing photograph from Corticelli Street at the intersection with Pine Street. And then this is the simulation that shows the proposed facility. In the right-hand side of the photograph, you can see the smokestack now has the antennas removed from it. This is a view from Meadow Street close to the Mill River Bridge. You can oversee the public gardens. The smokestack is clearly visible in this photograph. And this is the simulation showing the proposed tower. I would look from this perspective. This is a little bit further to the west on Meadow Street. Again, looking over a different section of the public gardens. Obviously, again, for reference, the smokestack is visible kind of the left center of the photograph. And this is the proposed facility. Right here. And then we also have a simulation right on the subject property. This is the existing conditions with the exception of the trailer, which has been since removed. But as far as the Elks Lodge building and kind of the facilities around it and fencing, that's all existing conditions. And then this would be the view close up with the privacy slats and the fencing. So you really wouldn't see any of the actual equipment. You just see the monopole structure from this perspective. So and that concludes our photograph simulation package.
Thank you. George, do you have a question?
I think one last question. So I believe from the plans, there's going to be an underground electrical service from Pine Street to the cabinets to the new facility. Is that correct? I'm not sure what I see there on drawing number EC1. a dotted line coming from Pine.
So there's an existing power line that runs from the street along the river that feeds the building. And it's
underground or?
No, it's overhead now.
Yeah.
So from that location, it could either go overhead or underground from there, depending on what the utility purveyor will allow. Because it's in the floodplain, our thought was that they'd have to put a pole in and put basically an elevated transformer in that location. But we have the ability to do either depending on what their requirements are.
Okay, all right. So if you do go underground there's just a couple of trees along that belt of land there. There aren't many trees on this property. And I just want to make sure that if you do go underground for some reason, it doesn't impact those 2 trees that are there.
No, sir.
Okay.
That's my knowledge.
Would you mind putting those on the plan when you revise your plans, the 2 trees that?
I think let me show you. I think the trees you're talking about are here. There's a couple trees right here, and the existing power lines are along here.
Okay.
And we'd go straight across this here. The only thing that's in this area here, there's a sediment trap that's here, part of the stormwater system, and to the rear here is the detention basin. So I don't think there are any trees between these 2 locations. I believe you're talking about the trees along this area and along the bank here. And the idea is
no, not along the bank. It's closer to the paved parking lot.
Yeah, no, those are here.
Okay.
These are on the existing condition. This is the existing condition plan. Those are shown here. And we're actually going to be in this location across. We have to get from this existing line that's here, either from this pole or this pole.
All right.
To where the tower is in here. So if you see here, there are no tree species in that area.
Thank you.
Be affected. You can also see that on the aerial as well. I believe the trees you're looking at are in here. And we would be going in this location here between the sediment trap and the detention basin.
All right.
Utilities.
Great.
Thank you. Councilor Maori, you had a follow-up question.
This was wanted to clarify about the smokestack. So is there any plans to take it down? Because so you're going to have the tower and then this the smokestack that's becoming more and more dilapidated. Are there any plans to either take it down or restore it enough so it's not a hazard and an eyesore, so you don't have both things going on in the sight line?
So to the best of my understanding, the smokestack is part of the, the arts and industry building. And so any maintenance or plans to make adjustments to that structure would happen with that ownership. The only obligation of Verizon would be to remove their existing equipment that's on the outside of the tower. Yes. Please approach. Yes. It's so people online can hear you.
I'm so sorry. One thing I thought, I think we were all waiting to see the sightline from our residential street, Corticelli Street. There's a non-residential block of our street, and I noticed that all the images that they really chose were the least residential. We're really in the village of Northampton, and I mean of Florence, and I just don't think those pictures showed what we're going to see, what our street's going to see, and our houses are going to see. And I look right, I see that smokestack, but that smokestack is part of like the vernacular architecture of like mills in the Northeast. This is not. So I just don't think that, I think that was left out of the visual, the photos. So anyway, just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Spring Street. In the bond, would the bond also cover should that there be a flood that took it out, or a wind strong enough to take it down, that they would also be responsible for cleaning that up as well as part of the bond, not just the removal at the end of the life.
Thank you. Carolyn, well, let's continue. Alex.
Hi, Alex Bone. I just wanted to ask one more question, that the existing panels and technology doesn't have any moving parts versus the new technology that does have fans that can fail. And if they don't make any sound, I hope that the board, if they choose to approve the permit, can add special conditions to give nearby residents that have sound issues, if it occurs, a way to deal with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there somebody else who had, please?
Debbie Gottlieb, again, 34 Corticelli Street. If something like this goes through, are they required to have radio frequency emissions testing on a periodic basis to make sure, especially, and I'm not sure because I'm not an engineer here, but if they, let's say they put 3 different services on the pole, does that also increase the radiation put out there? So that was one thing. And then my other main thing is I didn't really hear a lot about, at the beginning of this project, were other alternatives explored? The chart pack, you know, back in the woods there. I don't know if that was a possibility, but thank you.
Thank you. I can, I think, address a couple of the questions here. So I think we heard from the applicant that they did do a thorough study of all possible sites within a mile radius of this property and determined that they were not viable. And I'm sure that that included the chart pack property. Relative to sound concerns, the city has an existing noise ordinance. And if there are concerns from residents about violations of that ordinance, they should be directed to, and I'm looking at Carolyn here, the building commissioner. The building commissioner. The building commissioner. Okay. Relative to the renderings, that is a wonderful benefit of technology and attention on the part of the applicant to have this quality of renderings with the balloon photos and simulations and so forth. So we can't viably ask them to go back and give us a rendering from a specific location, but they have given us 12 different renderings that I think give a sense of the scope and scale and sight lines. And so, you know, maybe take a couple of these images and look out your window or your yard or from whatever direction you see this and try to sort of superimpose it, and that may help you to get a sense of what you will see. Carolyn, there was a question about the terms of the bond and if there were to be a disaster. I know earlier there were some concerns raised about fire or other issues, flooding, et cetera, at the site. I don't think that the bond is intended to address that, but could you speak toward those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, initially, I think, you know, way back when these first started popping up, it certainly was about once they were no longer in use, you know, that you could remove them. But I think that given the fact that this is in a floodplain and could be impacted by a natural disaster in that way, that there's nothing that would restrict you to ensure that language also includes removal in the event that it's destroyed by natural disaster.
Although if it's part of their
George, Mike.
If it's an integral piece of Verizon's network, they're going to jump right on it to reinstall it and make it operable again, right? But I guess it can't hurt to say that they need to deal with it.
Well, they'd probably be more apt to install a new one and wait to remove the debris.
Just say it maybe provides a time frame, so there is a time, there's time to, if it's abandoned after however long, I don't know, it's reasonable, but.
I'm sorry, Alex had his hand up first.
Ask one question. For a special permit, this is not a by right use, right? And it could have special conditions applied to it that are not elsewhere in the city because it's not a by right use. So it could have extra sound conditions on it, that are more stringent than the general bylaws of the city because it's a special use. And I think that's what I was requesting, because it is a different use. It's not by right. That to have this operate, to approve it, there should be some extra stringent sound regulations under the condition of the special permit.
So it's a special permit because you're asking, there's a new monopole. Definitely the board, if it determines that there's a reason to apply conditions to a specific location to mitigate for that, but I don't know that you've heard anything about sound being particularly, what's that? Right. And so you couldn't just apply something without a rationale for why you're asking for special permit conditions. The sound regulations are, apply across the board for these types of uses, and noise levels would be measured at the property line, and enforcement would take place if there's an excess of the allowed sound levels.
Thank you. You're good. Okay.
Just looking at my notes, I know that Councilmember Maori asked, I think it was, are there mitigations for effects on sight lines? Was that the?
Yes, that was what I heard.
What they are.
Okay. And so do we know the answer to that question?
I don't think we directly asked the applicant. No, this is slightly different from what Councilor Maori asked and the clarification you're asking for. But Carolyn also brought up that we as the board have the ability to request some aesthetic changes, which won't help with sightlines, but may perhaps help with the visual impact if we so chose to mitigate the.
But to be clear, there's nothing in the proposal as far as mitigation.
Not to my understanding, but if the applicant has anything to add here, I believe that Councilor Maori was expressing that she read something in the proposal that suggested there had been mitigation of sightlines, but perhaps I misunderstood.
Thank you.
It is a standard galvanized steel pole that reflects the light in a way that we think is better than painting or having a monopine where there's plantings, and we try to place it in a place that is the most advantageous to everyone. And so we're very sensitive to that issue, and we're designing the location. So
yeah, I would just ask that for the purposes of our application, I think that language really just is attempting to speak to the fact that depending on your line of sight, you have some obstruction of the structure, whether it's because of the factory to the east, whether it's a tree line, whether it's changes into topographical features that render it, more hidden than others. And I think that's really what it was attempting to express.
My last question, and I think I'm asking it a second time, it's just about at night, the night skies. Right now, the smokestack doesn't have any kind of warning beacon on it. I believe down on King Street, there's a warning beacon on that big pole because it's probably in the flight line of the airport. And I think what I heard is that we can't permit that in any way or condition it, that's all done by the
Yeah,
next round of.
FAA makes determinations precisely on those flight paths as to whether or not a facility needs to have some sort of notification, like this facility does not require that this facility will not be lit.
Good, because I think that's what will jump up to a butters at night if they go out and look.
Certainly, certainly understood, and but this facility doesn't have that requirement.
Are there further questions from the board for the applicant? George, you're making a maybe kind of face.
I can't believe I'm done.
You did great. Are we ready to close public comment?
I move to close public comment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Sam moved to close public comment. Stacy seconded. Because we are members of the board are hybrid, we're going to do a roll call vote to close public comment. Sam?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And Jana votes yes. Okay. Carolyn, I have a clarifying question about related to the revised site plans, the relocation of the propane tank, and the change of the siting for the area for this structure. Do we need to condition or note that at all in our approval, or because that's part of Conscom's conditions, we don't need to address it?
Given this situation where principally the site issues are related to Conservation Commission compliance with the construction within the floodplain, everything is within that fenced area. I would say that it's, and they're minor adjustments. I think, you can certainly note that, and I think all of those relate to the Conservation Commission permit conditions. So I don't think that you need to specifically reference or wait for, final plans.
Okay. It's been noted that the staff memo recommends we consider two pieces, a performance guarantee related to the removal of the existing equipment within 12 months of when it ceases to be used, as well as a bond for removal of the tower in the event that it is discontinued. And we also discussed the possibility of adding in language to removal of the tower in the event that it is damaged or destroyed in a natural disaster of some kind, with a time limit on that. Do people have thoughts about whether we want to condition one or both of those things? If so, thoughts about a time limit?
I'll just say that in the file system, there was a note about decommissioning of the existing facility at 122 Pine Street. It says, and I imagine it was written by the applicant, decommissioning of the smokestack equipment will take place approximately 180 days after the new facility's activation, which is 6 months. So if they're comfortable with 6 months in terms of the smokestack equipment, that would work for me. Sooner the better. Thanks.
So we're saying have that as a condition, 6 months.
6 months for the smokestack, and then the other one would be, we didn't specify an amount for the performance guarantee, right? Or well, that
Yeah. Caroline, your mic.
For that, I think I would want to do, I think maybe if you could do the condition with the amount to be determined by staff based on current market evaluation. That would be just so there's more time for me to understand what that might be.
And we can provide a letter with what the cost would be from our engineering firm, and you can weigh that at your. Okay.
Fluid economic time.
Okay. Are there any other proposed conditions?
That is all one condition, right? For decommissioning, or is that two conditions?
I think two.
We'll wrap up the special permit.
Where's your mic?
Wrap up the special permit and the site plan all in the same motion.
I think so. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move that. Let's see. We approve site plan and special permit on behalf of Verizon for installation of new telecommunications tower at 17 Spring Street, map ID 22B-111. With the conditions that we've discussed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. We will do another roll call vote. I'm going to go in reverse order. George. Stacy.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That does it. Thank you to the applicant. Good luck. Thank you to everybody from the neighborhood for coming out and participating.
Thank you.
Carolyn, we need to vote to continue.
Need to open it officially and continue. Yeah.
Okay. So I will next open our 7:30 hearing for a site plan for a major project by R. Levesque Associates for two buildings of approximately 20,000 square feet, mixed-use condominiums and site development at 76 Maple Street, Florence, map ID 17C-233 and 327. The applicant has requested a continuation to May 8th in order to have time to respond to comments from the DPW. Carolyn, the May 8th hearing, do we have anything else scheduled?
We just have one. We don't have it scheduled. The legal notice will go out next week. So we just have one other hearing that's a smaller project. So I would probably recommend this to maybe 7:30, and then we can put the smaller one at 7.
Okay.
But this was a small one.
Yeah, I remembered the last telecommunications tower, which was near JFK. So, all right. Any questions, or is there a motion?
I'll move to continue the permit for 76. What is it? 76 Maple Street for May 4th? May 8th at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Great. All right, we'll do another roll call vote. Sam?
Yes.
Good to see you, Sam.
Rich?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Stacy?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Do we have any ANRs or minutes? Sorry. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I will motion to adjourn at 8:56.
A second.
Okay. Rich,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you, everybody.
All right.